Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today I thought I would recommend some books for you to distract you from the summer heat. I've said this many times, I'm not really a summer girly. I do not at all thrive in the heat. I feel like when it gets above like 25 degrees, I feel like I'm melting and I really don't like it. And I know some of you are the same, but also some of you are not. Like, some of you love summer, and I'm so jealous that you can, like, live your best life in the heat because I just can't. I do love reading in the summer though, and even though I like to read sort of seasonally, I talked to someone the other day who said that they read the most in summer because they like tear through books to distract themselves from the heat. And the book that they were reading right now was like a wintry book. And this gave me the idea to maybe give you some book recommendations that can distract you from how hot it is. Although I know some of you are not in like hot climates right now, but for those of you who are, but if you're in the middle of like a heat wave, books can only do so much. So I recommend reading these books in the shade with a fan and an ice cream, probably, or like something cold to drink. Actually, that sounds kind of nice either way, like heat wave or no heat wave. Anyways, I'm just rambling at this point. I have a stack of books to show you, and then at the end I also have like a very small TBR. I have a couple of books that I feel like might distract me this summer, and we're just gonna go through all of them. I've separated these into different sections, so we're gonna start with books set in cold climates, which might give you like some mental escape. Like I mentioned, like to sort of read books in the season that I'm in, but I guess reading a book set somewhere cold does sound kind of nice right now. The first one I have is one of my favorite wintry books. It's Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, which is a classic, and I'm sure most of you have heard of this. It's a Poirot mystery, and it's set on the famous Orient Express, where an American tycoon is murdered, having been stabbed a lot of times, but in a room, like in his room, and the door is locked from the inside, which is obviously strange. Poor Poirot, who is just on vacation trying to relax, he ends up, of course, trying to solve this mystery. And I just think this is a very clever and atmospheric book. The Poirot series is one of my favorite mystery series, and I feel like even if you've heard of the story or you kind of know what it's about, it's still worth the read. Like, it is a classic for a reason. The second one I have is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, which is set at a ski resort in the mountains. And there's this family reunion happening that no one really seems to want to go to, let alone our main character, who's really dreading going because in one way or another, everyone in this family has a death on their hands. And then things get even more complicated when a blizzard hits and a dead body is found in the snow, and it's all just a big mess. So we have this mystery going on, but we also have all of these different relationships, and there's a lot of strain and tension, and it's just a mess. I will say though, the tone in this book is maybe not for everyone, and the writing might not be for everyone. It's the kind of writing where the main character or like the narrator will break the fourth wall and speak to you directly as a reader, which I know not everyone likes, but I actually really enjoyed it in here. I thought it was like a fun little extra thing, and I just think this is a really fun and entertaining book, and it's like an interesting whodunit. Then we have Misery by Stephen King, which I guess is also like a classic at this point. This one is about a best-selling novelist who gets in a car accident and is saved by his biggest fan, who decides to bring him home and nurse him back to health. But she also is very, very unhappy with his latest book, and she's not gonna let him go until he fixes his mistake. This is a pretty crazy story, and I think this might be my favorite Stephen King, although to be fair, I haven't read a lot of his books yet. I just think the whole dynamic between the two characters in here is very interesting, and I think both the novelist and this woman, both of them are just interesting people to read about. The woman in particular is very unhinged, and you never really know what's gonna happen or where you have her, and I just really enjoyed this one. It's also set over the course of a whole winter, so that's where the wintry aspect comes in. It's really good, and it's an interesting commentary on like fans and that whole thing. Moving a little bit away from the mysteries onto something else, we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett, which is more on the cozy side of things, but it does have a fair bit of darkness to it as well, which is one of the reasons why I love this one so much. I talk about this book often, but the story is about a Cambridge professor who specializes in fae and fairies, and she is going on a research trip to this wintry town, and she doesn't really, like, immediately she manages to offend the townspeople, so she doesn't really get along with them, and that causes some problems. But then her rival slash friend shows up uninvited to help with this research project, and everyone loves him, so that smooths things over in this town. And the story is basically about her doing research, and they sort of end up going on an adventure in their world and other worlds. This is a very atmospheric read, and the whole trilogy is excellent, I think. And the second book is, I don't think it's set specifically in winter, but it's set in the Alps, I think in autumn, so that could also be like a nice read if you want to get distracted. But I feel like these books are also just so easy to get into and get lost in, that that in and of itself is kind of distracting. Back with the mystery though, we have The Broken Girls by Simone St. James, and this is the kind of book that has two timelines, and both of them are set in Vermont. The first one is set in 1950 at this school called Idlewild Hall, where basically you can, like, it's a school for unwanted girls, and we meet four roommates there who are very close, and they really bond until one of them goes missing. The other perspective is set in 2014, where we meet a journalist who cannot let go of the death of her sister, who died 20 years prior, and she was found near this school. How all of this is connected, you learn throughout, and this is such a great read. It's set mainly in like autumn and winter, and it's so atmospheric. It does have some horror elements to it and like some other weird stuff going on, but I just loved this one. I felt like it weaved together like the setting of the school and the characters and the mystery together in such a great way. Secondly, I have some books that are a little insane, which I feel like can be distracting because you'll be more focused on like trying to figure out what the hell is going on. The first one I have here is The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, which is like a roller coaster of a book, and you really just need to hang on in here because it's all a little complicated and a little crazy. The story follows a character who is stuck in a time loop at this huge estate, and he is told that he gets 8 days to try and figure out who murders Evelyn Hardcastle at the end of this day, but he doesn't wake up each of the days in his own body. He wakes up in different people's bodies in this estate because there are all of these guests there, and who knows if he one of these days wakes up in the body of the killer. We don't know. And also, some of these like hosts are more helpful than others. This is the kind of book that just throws you right in, and you kind of just have to figure it out as you go along, so it can be a little bit confusing in the beginning, but once you sort of realize what's going on, it's so interesting and it's really fun, and it's just kind of crazy. Like, the whole setup of this book is a little insane, but I just think it's so good. Next, we have Dawn by Octavia E. Butler, which will distract you because this has these really creepy, weird aliens in it. And I remember when I read this book, I found those aliens like really freaky and creepy, and I still think about them from time to time, and they are just like so off-putting. This follows a main character who wakes up on an alien spacecraft, and she learns that she and some other people have been saved from Earth by these aliens because Earth was being ruined by this atomic fire, and so they couldn't live there anymore, and they've been kept asleep for many, many years, and they can now return to Earth. But she also learns that this is what these aliens do. They save what they feel like are primitive civilizations, and they reintroduce them to their habitat. But like, the way that this alien species survives is that they mate with these civilizations, so that is like the price of being able to go back to Earth. I really need to read the other two books in the series, but I'm a little scared to because this book really creeped me out, and it was really disturbing, but it was disturbing in that way where there's a part of you that like doesn't want to keep going because you're just like, oh no, absolutely not. But then there's another part of you that is just very, very curious. I also feel like a book about walking plants taking over might be distracting. We have The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, which is set in this world where there are these like plants that are really big and they can pick up their roots and walk around, and they are venomous and carnivorous, but everyone is kind of just used to them. They're just like a part of everyday life, and like they're a part of industry, but also some people just like keep them in their backyards, and everyone is just used to them. Unfortunately, though, there's then this huge cosmic event which everyone who looked at that ends up blind, and so most of humanity loses their eyesight, and this leads to the collapse of society. And there are a few, like a very few people who can still see, like our main character who happened to be in the hospital when this happened. And this is obviously already terrible. Like the collapse of society is terrible and everyone losing their eyesight is terrible. But it's also really bad when we have these plants that then start, appearing everywhere and they can just walk around. So if no one is keeping them, they just walk around. So it's not enough that society collapses. They also then have these really dangerous plants just walking around. Then we have Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. And this is a book that, especially towards the end, you will be like, what the hell is this? And I feel like this book might not be for everyone, but if you like weird books, this is a really good one. This starts off with us meeting our main character as she's on vacation with her mother, and she's approached by this mysterious stranger who sets her a series of tasks that it's kind of complicated, but she basically can't refuse them. But if she passes all of these like tests that this guy gives to her, she might earn a place at this Institute of Special Technologies. And this is just at the beginning of the book. She gets into the school and she gets there and realizes that this institute is something else. And the classes that they have are like very obscure. The books that they're supposed to read are impossible to understand, and it's just super weird. And she wants to leave, but then she also kind of can't leave. And then eventually she becomes obsessed with this whole curriculum because she starts having some interesting experiences. It's very difficult to summarize this book, I gotta say, but I really like this one. It is super weird, and especially towards the end, it gets very conceptual. But the book is like a blend of magic and science and horror and philosophy, and I just really liked it. But then I generally like these kinds of weird books, so that kind of makes sense. Back to a more disturbing, almost disgusting vibe, we have Perfume by Patrick Süskind. This is one of my favorite horror books, actually. It's historical fiction horror, and the story is about this boy who is born in 18th century France, and he is born with an incredible sense of smell, and he eventually becomes the apprentice of a perfumer, and he's obsessed with capturing all kinds of different scents. And that turns really horrible when one day he catches the scent of a virgin, and he wants to capture that scent at any cost. What makes this book so special is how everything is described in here, especially all of these different smells and scents. And it makes for a really atmospheric and immersive read, and you really feel like you're there, for better or worse. Then, inspired by that person who said that they just like to read lots and lots during summer to get distracted, I have a bunch of short books that you can just stack up and make your way through, and at least you'll be distracted for maybe a few hours. The first one is a horror book. It's What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is the story of this retired soldier who gets word that their childhood friend is dying, and so they race to their ancestral home, and then they get there and everything is just really off. Like, nature and the house and the lake nearby has all been taken over by this fungal growth, and everything is just off. The friend also walks in her sleep and speaks in strange voices at night, so it's all just really weird and wrong. And I won't say much more than that because this is a pretty short book, but this is very, like, gothic and creepy. The next one is one of my favorite books. It's I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, which is a dystopian book, and it's about this main character who lives in a cage deep underground with 39 other women, and none of them know why they're there or how they got there, and most of them only have vague recollections of life before. But our main character is the youngest in this cage, so she has no memory of life before at all, so all she knows is life in this cage. They're constantly watched over by these male guards who never speak to them, but then one day an alarm goes off and the guards flee, and the story is about what happens after that. I loved this book. I think it's just so good and so well crafted and very interesting. But I will say, if you're the kind of reader who wants answers to all of your questions at the end, this is not the one. Then we have this beautiful little book. This is The Little Snake by A.L. Kennedy, which follows a girl through a pretty big portion of her life, despite this book being very short. And in her childhood, she meets this shining golden snake, and the snake becomes her best friend and visits her through various portions of her life, through love and growing up and war. I know that's not really a lot to go on, but I feel like just going in blind is the best way. This is a magical, beautiful, and slightly sad little book. The last two I have, before we move on to my little TBR, are both graphic novels. So we have The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich, and this is such a fun and lovely read, and it's just so cute. In here we follow Lady Camembert, who wants to live life on her own terms, and she doesn't want to marry, which is a little bit of an issue because women cannot inherit in this kingdom. And so when her father passes away, she decides to move to the capital city and disguise herself as Count Camembert instead, so she can live life the way that she wants to. This works pretty well until she runs into Princess Bree, who is lovely and beautiful and very difficult to stay away from, so things get a little bit complicated. This is a romance book in a lot of ways, but there is other stuff going on as well. I feel like it's like a romantic comedy, and I just think this is such a fun and lovely read. The color palette is beautiful and kind of like summery, actually, and I love the humor in this book, like just the fact, like everything with the cheese just really makes me laugh. Like the kingdom in here is called the Kingdom of Fromage. So cheese is like a huge theme in this book, and I just think it's lovely, and I especially love the way that the expressions of the characters are drawn sometimes. Like it just makes me chuckle so much. The other one is Sheets by Brenna Thummler, which follows this teenage girl who is basically in charge of her family's laundry business, and she has like the weight of the world on her shoulders. And then one day in her laundry business, or the family's laundry business, she runs into Wendell, who is a ghost, and he is the ghost of a boy who lost his life very young. This will take you through all of the emotions. It's beautiful and sad, heartwarming and sweet, and it's just a lovely little read. Obviously, for obvious reasons, this could also be read for spooky season, but the color palette is really lovely in here, and I really enjoy the art, and I especially enjoy like the ghosts and the world of the ghosts. I just think is excellent. And this does have quite a lot of like themes of grief and stuff as well, and there's just a lot of emotions in this book, and you get to experience it with all of this beautiful art. Lastly, we have my little TBR, which honestly I do not need to add more books to my summer TBR, but there's just 3 of them, so oh well. The first one is Adulthood Rights by Octavia Butler. So this is the sequel to Dawn that I mentioned. And like I said, I'm scared to read this book because I don't know what's going to happen in here. But I am also very intrigued because I think that this book follows the first like human alien hybrid that is made in that creepy union in the first book. And I just think that sounds really interesting. I also really love this author. Like, I've never read a book by her that I didn't think was, like, wildly interesting. The second one I have is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And I think this could be distracting, in part because space is distracting and there is no summer in space, I'm pretty sure. And in part because reading about space always gives me a little bit of existential dread. which is always distracting. I'm really excited to read this one though, even though I don't know that much about it. All I really know is that it's about a motley crew adventuring through space together. And I've heard that if you like the series Firefly, you'd really like this book, and I love that series. So I think this is going to be great. I've also read a couple of books by this author now and really enjoyed them. So there's no way that I'm not going to enjoy this one. Lastly, because I mentioned a lot of mystery novels in this video, I figured I would pick one for myself as well. So I picked A Morbid Taste for Bones by Ellis Peters, which is a historical fiction mystery about a monk who solves crimes. And I think this is set in the 12th century, so in medieval times. And I just think that sounds really fun and also kind of funny. I don't really know what the tone of this is going to be, if it's like more humorous, but I just really like the idea of this. Like, it has to be like entertaining. Whether you find reading helpful in times of hot weather or not, I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe just watching this in and of itself was distracting, if nothing else. I feel like reading can be distracting, but if it gets too hot, there's only so much that you can do. And like I mentioned, I'm miserable when I'm too hot, so I'm just not a good time then anyway. I do quite well in cold weather though, so maybe I'm just built for that instead. But of course, the perfect thing is when the temperature is like in the middle, when it's just right. Now, if you thought of a book that you feel like it could be distracting or perfect to read this time of year, let us all know in the comments. That was it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!